She often sits here in front of the video. You probably have seen her online. So this morning we're going to be working on the front and the back line. So it's a bit of spine, a little bit of quads and hip flexors, which are sometimes hard to stretch. So we are starting in one of our harder of yin poses. It's not that hard. We're going to start in a dragon. So just have a couple blocks. Have your blocks handy on whatever level, but we're going to come into a kneeling lunge and taking that. So bring your right leg forward. We'll start with the right leg forward and scooch your left knee back enough that you're feeling a stretch through the front of that left thigh, the front of your back thigh. And you can use your blocks just to place your hands on. If you prefer, you can put an elbow on the knee or both elbows, but we're going to be here for about 3 minutes. So as you're here, sometimes the tendency, because it is a bit of a stronger of the yin postures, is to hold tension in the shoulders and the neck. So just try and relax through the shoulders and the neck as you do this posture. And if you need to pad your knee, you can use a blanket or anything else that you want for that as well. And you can either put the blanket right under the knee, or you can put it, I think that's Mel, or you can put it just behind the kneecap so that the kneecap is sort of in the air. So I put it so the pressure is more on my shin and my kneecap sort of hangs free. There's Mel. And Zoe.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're just getting started in our first dragon.
Okay.
I'm gonna pop you on mute.
Yeah.
All right. So we're finding this dragon, and we've already been here for about a minute with a bit of fidgeting. So now is the time to just sort of soften into this. Resolve to stay here for the next 2 minutes without too much fidgeting. The usual caveats apply. If you have any shooting pain, numbness or tingling, or just odd sensations that you need to come out of the posture, then please feel free to do so, or even just ease out of it a little bit. Otherwise, try not to fidget. Try just to stay here, come into your breath. Let's just start by taking a nice long deep breath in through the nose, opening the mouth, let it all out in a big sigh. And then continuing to breathe here. And you don't have to do a full-on yoga breath, but allow the breath to guide your practice. So allow gravity to send your hips towards the earth. Allow yourself to feel yourself breathing all the way down to the belly. And we're actually going to progress this dragon for an additional 1.5 minutes. So we're coming up to 2.5 minutes. And so we're going to, again, keep those blocks handy. You'll use them as much as you need to. I'm going to move myself back on my mat a little bit so you can see me. We're going to come down to a low dragon, which means keeping your legs exactly where they are and coming down. You can bring both blocks onto the inside of that right leg. You can come down onto your elbows on your blocks, or coming down all the way to the ground, or a low level. Just find the level that makes sense for you. And again, just like before, just try and make sure that you're not holding tension through your shoulders and your neck. Try and keep those relaxed as you let gravity do the work here. And come back to your breath and allow yourself to soften. We've got less than a minute to go in this slow dragon. Some people call it a gecko pose. Try not to clench the jaw. Keep the face soft. Really opening up through these hips. Take a nice long deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, let it all out. And then you're just going to slowly come out of this, and we're just going to go into downward dog for about half a minute, just because it's sometimes a really nice counter posture to where we've been. So just come up into your downward dog. You can stretch out your calves if you want a little bit, bending one knee at a time. And just see how things are feeling in those hips. Down into a child's pose. So just let yourself down into your child's pose. We'll take a narrow knee child's pose, so keeping both knees together and forehead towards the mat. If you want to use a blanket or pillow under your head, you can. Take your hands down close to your heels, palms facing up. And we'll just stay here for about 30 more seconds, and then we'll get prepared to do the other side. All right, so when you're ready, coming back up, and we'll get set up on the other side. So, well, if you're using a blanket under your knee, get that set up. And this time it's going to be the left foot coming forward, making sure that that front knee is stacked over the front ankle, toes are pointed forward, and scooching that right knee back enough that you're getting a nice stretch through the front of your right thigh, your back thigh. Keep those shoulders relaxed, neck relaxed, and face soft here as we hold this for about 2.5 minutes, followed by 1.5 minutes in our low dragon. So Mel, you might have missed this. You can use blocks here, or you can use an elbow or on the knee. Yeah, your choice. Everyone's a little bit different. Or pull boys. I like the pull boys. Those are good. Coming back to the breath. And once more, allowing yourself just to soften and surrender into this. Trying not to fidget. It's a tough one. So like I had mentioned, we're going to really work the front and the back line of connective tissue, which basically runs exactly as it sounds, sort of up the front of the legs and abdomen and torso, and running down the back and the back of the legs. So we're going to really focus on the front of the thighs, backs of the thighs, front of the spine, back of the spine today. Maybe about another minute here in our high dragon. Just check in. My tendency is to my shoulders start to creep closer and closer to my ears. So just try and keep them relaxed away from the ears. And then when you're ready, you can slowly progress down into that low dragon. So again, using your block or your pull boys, you can bring them to the inside of the left foot so that you can come down onto your elbows at whatever level. And you might find you're at a different level than the other side, as I've just found. So, and that's normal. To be tighter on one side than the other is 100% normal. And once you're there, once again, just try and soften into the posture. We're going to be here for just over a minute longer. Come back to your breath. Breathing all the way down into the belly. And since we're working on that front line and back line today, we can come into a circular breath. So we've done that before, where you're breathing in through the mouth and down the front line of your body to your belly button, which is sort of the inferno furnace of the body area. And as you breathe out, the air goes down between the legs and around and back up the spine, all the way up through the crown of the head. Just imagine that that's the path that the air takes as you breathe it in, down the front line to the belly, and as you breathe it out, between the legs, around and back up the back line through the crown of the head. Take one more long, deep breath in through the nose. Let it all out through the mouth. And then slowly, at your own pace, start to walk yourself back into your downward dog. And once you're in your downward dog, you can feel free to walk that out again. And just notice now how you're feeling. Maybe things have started to balance out a little after those first two dragons. Maybe not. And once you've had enough of that, go ahead and come down and back into that child's pose, knees together, hands down by the heels, palms up. And you can use, like before, a pillow or a blanket or a block under your head if you don't want to bring your forehead all the way to the mat. I'll just pause here for another half a minute or so, allowing the body just to reset itself. And then when you're ready, sitting back up, and we're going to come to sit with our legs out in front of us. We're going to set up for caterpillar, which is really just our forward fold with props. So you got lots of options here. You can sit on a blanket or a pillow if you want, or a block if you want to raise your hips up a little bit, just to keep that low back from taking on too much of the pressure, trying to keep it from slumping. You can come into a caterpillar without props, and you're just doing a forward fold, but in a relaxed manner, palms facing up. If you want to, you can use a bolster under your knees so that the stretch is going to really come from the back and not necessarily hamstrings. I'm going to target my hamstrings a little bit more today, but again, I'm going to use the bolster on my legs, basically, so that I'm coming down onto the bolster. If you've got the squishy bolsters, you can squeeze them and give them a hug. So multiple options of how you want to do this. But just whatever you choose, make sure that you're thinking about that scale in Yin Yoga of stretch. So you don't want it with so much pressure that you're feeling a 6 or 7 out of 10 like we would a normal stretch, but you want to ease off of that. Use the props as needed. And come into about a 4 out of 10. And we're going to be here for about 5 minutes. I'm going to let you know when we're about halfway through, so that if you want to go further into the pose and sink further in at that point, you can. And just notice where you're feeling the stretch today, which again will depend. If you've got your legs bent, you might be feeling it more in your back. If your legs are straight, you might be feeling it more in your hamstrings, or maybe you're feeling it in your back if you've got nice flexible hamstrings. So it's different for everybody, but it's somewhere along the back line. So backs of the legs, back of the back. Come back to that circular breath where you're breathing in to the back of the throat, down the front line to the belly. And as you breathe out, it's circling around and back up the back line of the body up through the crown of the head. And allow that breath to guide you. Allow it to soften that back line so that you can sink and surrender into this stretch. We are almost halfway through, so if you do want to sink further into your posture, if you haven't been already, feel free to do so, or feel free to stay right where you are. Or if that 4 out of 10, maybe you're a little ambitious and maybe it's a little bit higher than that, ease out of it. Use a prop and bring yourself back to something that you can know you can continue to hold for the rest of the time. Come back to your breath. Let it continue to circle, inhaling through the front line, exhaling through the back line. And maybe you can then move on to that fourth and elusive tenet of Yin, of becoming the observer of your body, standing outside it and just noticing what's happened, allowing your body to guide you, noticing if your thoughts start to wander. And if you do, it's okay. No need to judge. Just come back to present. Let them go. Allow them to be gone. And come back to your breath to help you refocus yourself back on the mat. Have about another minute here. When you're ready, take a nice long deep breath in through the nose. Open the mouth, let it all out in a big sigh. And then slowly start to sit yourself up and move all your props out of the way. You're going to come down to a starfish or tentacle pose. So we're going to lie down on our back, take the legs and the arms wide, and just allow the body to reset there for about a minute. So, pretty obvious reason why it's called starfish. It's all we're letting our body do. And as we allow both the back and the hamstrings just to reset for a minute. And then when you're ready, come back up to sit. And I'm just going to take a moment to explain this next posture to you. It's not one that I do very often, so I've got my cheat notes out as well. There's two ways to come into it. It's called the cat pulling its tail pose. Just, appropriate given I've got cats all around me. Um, However, it's a really strong stretch for the front of the thighs. So be careful with it. Have have some props nearby because we'll start with those behind us. So the first way to come into it is sitting with both our legs in front of you. And we'll twist to the right and recline on that right elbow. Hang on, I need to bring my cheat notes with me. All right. And then once you're there, we're going to keep this right leg straight. And we're going to bring the left leg forward and over to the side. So you're looking like this at the moment. All right. And then once you're there, you can look over. You're going to bend that bottom leg and grab hold of the foot. So you should start feeling a stretch through the bottom thigh, front of your thigh, your quad, or maybe your hip flexors. If you want to, you can try and bring that whole leg backwards a little bit and maybe come down further, just depending. The lower towards the ground you get, the more stretch you're going to feel. Now, did everyone get there? Because the other option is to begin lying on your back. I'll show you the other option if you're not feeling like you're there. I'm keeping the bolster behind me because I use it. And then you roll on to the right side. Keep that bottom leg straight, bring the top leg forward, and then bend. So it's very similar, just two different ways to get there. So once you're there, helps if I bring my timer with me. We're going to do 3 minutes on each side. So it might be partly because I did a workout yesterday that really worked my hip flexors and quads, and so mine are particularly tight this morning. So if you don't need to recline on something, then go all the way to the ground, and you can even look over that left shoulder for the full twist. But it can be quite a strong posture if you've got tightness through the quads and the hip flexors, which a lot of us often do. If you think about it, it's the opposite of sitting. And it's a hard muscle to stretch on a regular basis. So a lot of us get quite tight through here. So once you get to where you think you can hold for 3 minutes, come back to that breath again. Now as you're inhaling, let's breathe beyond the belly and all the way down to the knee so that you're breathing all the way down through that front line on the right side. And as you breathe out, you're breathing back up through the back line, through the back, where you're probably not feeling much at all. So you're breathing down through where you're feeling the stretch, breathing out where you're not feeling it on the opposite side, the back line. And we're about halfway through here. Allow yourself to just soften and surrender through this posture. Take a few more breaths down through the front leg, front line, all the way to that bottom knee. And breathing out, up through the back line, up through the crown of your head. And take one nice long deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, let it all out in a big sigh. And then release that foot. Let it, your bottom leg, go ahead and straighten. And then remove any props and coming into a child's pose. Doesn't matter what direction you're facing, but just like before, coming into that child's pose with the knees close together, That just helps to bring the spine into a more neutral position. When we have the knees wide apart, it extends it a bit. I'm just going to stay here for about a minute just to reset the first side before we move to the other side. When you're ready, coming up, and we'll go ahead and get set up on the other side. So just like the first side, you can either start with sitting with your legs out in front of you and twisting to the left and coming down on your elbow, or you can start lying on your back and roll onto your left side and maybe come up to your elbow. Either way, we should end up sort of in this position. Bring that right leg, the top leg, out in front of you, and then bend that bottom leg, the left leg behind you, and maybe grab onto that foot. And just wanting to feel that stretch in through the front of your thigh. Mel is demonstrating quite beautifully with a twist. And you might find that you're different on one side than the other, which is, again, completely normal. We're going to be here for about 3 minutes. So make sure that you found the number 4, give or take, on that stretch scale. Something that works for you. And coming back to your breath. And this time we're breathing all the way down into the top of the left knee, the bottom knee. Now, as you're breathing out, up through the thigh, through your spine at the back, and up through the crown of the head. As you start to really sink into that circular breath down the front line, front of the leg, exhaling out the back line, back of the leg, and up the spine. Allow yourself to just soften and surrender into this posture. Notice if you're holding any muscles tense because it's not the most comfortable of postures, and try and let go. Try and relax those muscles as you continue to do that circular breath. We have about another minute here. So adjust if you need to, coming further into the posture or out of it a little bit if you need to, or just staying right where you are. Recalibrating, noticing if those thoughts have wandered, and just coming back to that circular breath if you've let go of it. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then slowly release that foot. And you're going to slowly come back into that child's pose for about a minute, just to help the body to reset. Taking the arms down by the heels, palms facing up, and head either to the ground or to a pillow or a blanket, your choice. And when you're ready, coming back up to a seated position. And we're going to do a folded butterfly. So starting with our feet in that feet together and our knees in a loose diamond. So we don't need to pull them all the way up, just in a loose diamond. And if that's comfortable for you, they can just hang out there. Or you can use props underneath the knees if you want to. And we're just going to come into a folded butterfly. So you can, again, do this without props completely. If you want to use props, you can use a bolster, very much like we did in Caterpillar. Um, or you can make a ramp by putting a block so that you don't have the bolster with pressure on your feet if that bothers you. And you can also put a blanket underneath your ankles if your ankle bones um, get sensitive to the ground, which for some people they do. All right, and so then once you're there, we're going to actually do this one for 5 minutes. So find that position. And this one, you might feel the stretch through your groin, or you might feel it more through your low back. Similar to Caterpillar, this just fully releases those hamstrings so that you can really sink into it with your back a little more. But you might also stimulate through the inner thighs. And just like before, we're going to come back into that circular breath. So as you breathe in, breathing in down through the front line, all the way down to the belly. And as you breathe out, you're breathing around and up through the spine and the crown of the head. This is sort of opposite of the last stretch. So now we're breathing in through the relaxed side of the body, side that might get a little bit of compression, but not much else. And we're breathing out through the back line, which is on a stretch at this point. I'm just seeing if the breath out can help soften through that back line. And we're about halfway through here, so if you want to adjust, sinking further into the pose or stay where you are, moving a little bit out of it, now is a good time to do that. And once you have made any adjustments, then just be sure to come back into that circular breath once more. Remember that you've resolved to stay here for the full amount of time without too much fidgeting. Using your breath can assist you with that. Breathing through the front line, into the back of the throat, down the front line to the belly. Breathing out, around between the legs and back up the spine through the crown of the head. And maybe as you do this, you can move into that fourth tenet of Yin, of just standing aside, observing what's going on in your body, noticing what's happening. And if those thoughts start to wander, just bringing yourself back to the mat. About another half a minute here. And go ahead and take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, let it all out through the mouth. And then gradually and slowly just sit yourself up. And then we're going to go straight into the next posture because it also acts as a counter pose. So, Mel, you've got your foam roller. If you just get a blanket in on top of it. For the rest of us, just put your bolster onto your mat straight out in front of you. And you're going to come to basically do a side sit. So you've got your weight on your right hip and you bring that bolster or roller right down into the hip. And then take your top thigh back so that your bottom foot, the right foot, inner foot is up against the thigh or knee of the back thigh. So you're like a pinwheel with the legs. Can you guys see me? This is the of my legs. They're like this. And then I've got the bolster here. And all we're going to do is turn our twist our torso and just come down straight onto that bolster. Turn your head to look towards your knees. And once you're there, using as your prop in front of you, you'll feel the pressure of it against your front line. And this just counterbalances that posture of where we had our legs open. This really sort of gets more of the other rotation of our hip at the same time. So once you've found your position, come back to your breath. And because you've got some pressure on your front line just from the prop, you can really feel yourself breathing down through that front line all the way to your belly. And then you're breathing out through the free and airy back line, up your spine and up through the crown of your head. One is a little bit more of a restorative posture, unless your hips tight, in which case you might be feeling something through those hips as well. About another minute here, and then we'll swap to the other side. Take a nice long deep breath in through the nose. Out through the mouth. And then go ahead and start to push yourself up. So you'll come back up so the weight's all on that right hip and just turn yourself around so that now you're side sitting with all the weight on the left hip. And we're going to then do the same thing. And so you take that top thigh, the right thigh, you bring it back so that the knee is behind the left foot. So you've got that pinwheel shape. And as much as possible, and it's really hard for most people, you want to get that right hip in your hip, if you can see me, and just pulling it down. I have frozen on my own screen, so I'm not sure about the rest of you. All right. And then we're going to twist and turn towards our bolster or our roll, and coming down, and this time your head is turned towards the right, towards your knees. And we'll be here again for 3 minutes. So once again, you should feel that front line with the bolster. You might also feel an opening through sort of that right low waist and side body area, depending, again, just on your body and where you may or may not hold your tension through the connective tissue. Wherever it is that you're feeling it, just come back down into your breath so you can try and soften and surrender into this posture. So that you're breathing down through the front line where you feel the pop, all the way down to your belly. And breathing out, back up through the back line, spine up through the crown of the head. I'll be here for about another half minute. If those thoughts have wandered, or you've let go of that circular breath, just come back to it. Take a nice long deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, put it all out in a big sigh, and then slowly come to sit yourself up. And once you are up, we're going to try and find either a wall or a piece of furniture. So I'm going to be demonstrating against this chair. So we're going to basically do a version of Sleeping Swan that we've done for the last couple of weeks, but we're going to do it up the wall or the furniture. So what you're going to do is come relatively close to your piece of furniture or your wall, and you want it hopefully to be a little bit high. So I'm going to come towards the other armrest so that you can see me, this one. And basically I'm going to kind of lie down on my back, and we're going to start the right foot up against that furniture and cross the left over the knee. Now, if that's too strenuous already and you've got a wall, you can take your foot further up the wall. And you may not, I might have been too close to my piece of furniture. You can go without. Because the whole idea is that the further you bring your foot down the wall, Oh, I was actually right where I was. And you can take your left hand on your left knee and just push that left knee away from you and keep those left toes flexed up towards the sky. So you should be feeling this similar to what we feel in a sleeping swan on the left hip. It takes the tension out of the right leg that we do have in a sleeping swan when we do it on the ground. So we're going to do this for 4 minutes on each side. So try and relax into it. And if you need to prop your arm up on something to help maintain that part of the stretch, you can. But if you need to make the stretch stronger, you can bring your hips closer to the wall or the furniture, or keep that foot coming down the wall or the piece of the furniture. As long as you're all feeling a stretch here, that's what's most important. And I think I've explained before that our connective tissue, which is this very fibrous, non-elastic tissue, which is why we hold these postures for so long, but it sort of wraps around all of our muscles, our joints, and our organs, and so including our lungs and our hips. And there's some very sort of diagonal, spirally pieces of connective tissue that go around our lungs and continue all the way sort of across the abdomen and around the hips. And so as we breathe in and out, we're still breathing down through the front line into the abdomen, but just notice if there's an effect on the stretch in your hip as you breathe down that front line. And then as you release the air through the back line, back up through the crown of the head. We have about another minute and a half here. Apologies if I went missing there for a moment. Not sure what happened, but I'm back. So if you need to adjust, maybe bringing that foot further down the wall or bring your hips a little closer to the wall. Now is a good time to do that. And then come right back into that circular breath and noticing the effect still. Maybe the hip has loosened up in the last couple of minutes and it's not as strong of a sensation. You can still maybe feel the path of that breath and the fact that it changes the sensation in the hip with each breath in and each breath out. Take a nice long deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, let it all out. And then release that knee. Take both feet to your piece of furniture or the wall and just let your knees fall over to the right just for about half a minute, and then we'll go to the other side just to reset. So you're in a bit of a reclined twist. So when you're ready, just walk those feet back up your piece of furniture or the wall, and then let the knees come over to the other side for another half a minute. And then we'll bring coming back to center. So both feet on the wall at whatever height. If I had a wall, my heels would be way up there. Cross, what did we do last time? Yeah, cross the left foot over the, nope, cross the right foot over the left knee. And then once you're there, you can start to get that foot down to a level where you're going to feel a stretch, maybe propping up that right elbow if you need to, but you want that right hand to be able to push the right knee away from the face. And once you've found your position, we're going to be here for another 4 minutes. So finding your breath and once more breathing down in through the front line and just noticing if you can feel sort of that line of connective tissue that goes sort of across the abdomen and down through the other hip, the right hip now. And notice the sensation as you breathe in versus when you breathe out through the back line. Soften and surrender here. Hip is this big, huge bull joint. The connective tissue around it is very thick, and it takes a long time for the connective tissue to loosen. We're about halfway through, so if you need to adjust, either by bringing that left foot down the wall a little further, or if it's already fully bent, maybe bring your hips a little closer to the wall. You can do that now. Just noticing if that sensation has eased off through the hip. That's often a good sign that it is time to sink further into the posture. And once you've made any adjustments, once more just coming back to that breath, allowing the breath to really guide the sensation, allow yourself to fully soften, noticing if you are holding tension anywhere as a result of this stretch and trying to let go. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Open your mouth, let it all out. And then slowly uncross those legs, both feet on the wall. Keep the knees bent, and then just allow the feet to come down the wall so the knees come all the way over to one side. We're just going to pause there in that twist for half a minute or so, and then we'll twist to the other side once more. So go ahead and start to walk those feet back up your furniture or wall, and then let everything come to the other side, finding the twist on this side. And then we're going to come into our Shavasana, and we've got a couple choices here because we have some people with a wall, some people with a chair. If you're using a chair, you can just put your feet up on the chair with your knees in a nice bend. And if you're using your wall, you can take your feet all the way up to the wall. And if you don't want to do that, you can find a chair or you can use a bolster under your knees. But just giving the low back a nice break here. And we're just going to come into our Shavasana for a few minutes. So go ahead and make yourself comfy. If you need a blanket, if you've got a cold living room like I do, feel free to cover yourself up. And take the arms away from the body, palms facing up towards the sky. And allow yourself to fully relax in this posture. So you might actually feel your low back making contact with the ground, which it doesn't always do when we're in a regular Shavasana, but with the knees bent, it flattens out the low back a little bit. So just take note of whether it's on or off the ground. It doesn't matter which. But let's just start there as a point of relaxation and allow your abdominals and your hip flexors, we've given them a good stretch today, just fully relax down towards the ground through your sacrum, which is the base of your spine that definitely makes contact with the ground, and through your lumbar spine, which is your low back, and it may or may not make contact with the ground. We want to just fully relax through that area of the lower abdomen, the hip flexors, the thighs. Come back to your normal breath here for this Shavasana. Soften your jaw, let go of any tension in your face, and allow the space between your eyebrows just to widen a little at the third eye. Allow your eyelids to soften. And then feel the weight of your head fully supported by the earth so that you can fully relax your neck muscles and your shoulders as your shoulders fall towards the earth, allowing gravity just to open up through that chest, allowing all the muscles through the front of your torso, your rib cage, to fully relax. And the muscles of your back through that back line also to fully relax into the earth. You got nothing to do here but relax for the next couple of minutes. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Open your mouth, let it out in a big sigh. And then just turn your head from one side to the other, starting to awaken the spine. Start to wiggle your fingers and your toes. If your feet aren't up against the wall, you can make circles with your ankles and with your wrists. And then just take your arms up overhead and give yourself a nice big stretch from those fingertips all the way down to the wall or your furniture, not necessarily to your toes. Bring your hands back in to your chest. Bring your knees into your chest. Let's just do a couple circles in one direction and the other for one last final reset of those hips. And then roll onto one side or the other. Allow that lower arm just to pillow your head and stay there for a couple of nourishing breaths. And when you're ready, go ahead and push yourself away from the earth to come back up into a seated position, an easy seated position. And once you're there, go ahead and bring your hands to heart center and take a moment to thank yourself for coming to Yin Yoga, opening up those hips and hip flexors, particularly this morning. And I thank you all for sharing your practice with me today. Namaste.
Thank you, Christina.
No problem. Sorry,
I'm feeling much more flexible.
Oh, good. Well, I know